Well, it's time for a new barrel. So you spin one on, same caliber, same everything that your old barrel was, and you're thinking, yeah, I'm just going to use the same cartridge I used with the old barrel, right? I don't have to change a thing. Not so fast. Hi everyone, it's a 4Gun Guy. And today we're going to talk about my journey with a new barrel. Now, I've done videos on barrel break-in and all of that, but I want to talk to you about sometimes when you put a new barrel on, you might have made some changes like I did to the chamber. And yeah, that same cartridge fits in there perfectly, but maybe you shoot it a little bit and you go, something just seems off. So what I want to go over today is, I put a new barrel on. Why do I think I want to do my ladder and seating depth testing all over again? I already did it, so we'll look at some numbers. Talk about maybe, did I find a new node from a velocity standpoint? And then what do I do after that, right? What's the next step after finding that velocity node? And then we'll have some final thoughts. So if you're ready to go, let's get to it. Let's talk about why you might want to do a new ladder test when you put a new barrel on that rifle. And as I said in the intro, right, this is a new barrel. My buddy Larry Deese put this one on for me, chambered it for me, and he made some changes because on my old barrel, I was loading my alpha cases. Again, it's 6mm BRA, 107 grain Sierra Match Kings. I'm using H4895 powder with a CCI 450 primer. And once I got up into the 2800s from a velocity standpoint on that old barrel, I started to get pressure signs. So I got some swiping on the head of the case. I got a little bit of bulge in the primers. And I talked to Larry about it, and he said that it's probably the way the chamber's cut, and you're not going to be able to go much above that. So we talked, I got that reamer made and put it, spun this barrel on. And we're going to see from the testing that I just did that pressure issue isn't there anymore. But when I broke the barrel in, and here's something that I think some people jump into. I usually take about 200, 250 to break a barrel in. Now, I'm going to preface that by saying some guys, including me, will go shoot a match with a brand new barrel. So you just have to realize that sometime during the first 200, 250 rounds, that barrel's going to speed up. It could be a 15 feet per second speed up. It could be a 50 feet per second speed up. You just have to be ready for it. I've seen guys, Larry, the guy who did my barrel, we've been in matches where Larry's got a new barrel on that thing, and about stage 8 out of a 10-stage match, he's adjusted because he's realized he's going over the target because his barrel finally sped up. And so you just have to take notice of that and adjust for it if you're going to do this in a match. With my old load, because I was loading 28.4 grains of H4895, it was giving me, as we'll see, velocities of somewhere around 2765, 2770, which is generally where I like to live. But out at the range a couple times, I kind of noticed when I was checking zero, that's at 100 yards, that the groups were kind of opening up a little bit. They weren't as tight as they were with the old barrel. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do the ladder test. So here's what I did. I kept the seating depth the same because that's what you're going to do. Don't try to chase too many things all at the same time. So I loaded 4 different powder loads. 28.4, which is what I have been going with. Then I went up in 3/10 increments. So 28.7, 29, and 29.3. Now, I knew 29.3 was going to get me into the low to mid 2800 feet per second range. And I don't want to go beyond that. I just don't. I think you start eroding the barrel a little faster. I don't need that much speed. And so I wanted to stay in that range and just see what would happen. Let's look at the numbers. We'll look at the chart and we'll see what we came up with. There's something very interesting that's going to surface here. So I'm going to put this up on the screen right here. And this is just the overall Excel kind of spreadsheet that I use for this stuff. Right down the left-hand side, we see the load, the velocities. I used my Garmin to do all this in an indoor range, and they've got a great 100-yard range, nothing to interfere with it, no wind or anything. If we look at these velocities, and I'm going to go out to, I'll put the next one up, which is just the chart and the output from the raw data. Let's look at the upper left, the table there. We can see that at 21.4 or 28.4, average velocity 2761, 28.7, 2778, 29, 2805, and at 29.3 grains, 28.31. Now you look at that and you go, that popped out at me right off the bat. And so I put the column on the very end of this table. What do we see? Well, from 28.4 to 28.7 was only a 16.4 foot per second difference in that 0.3 of a grain load difference. But once you got to 29, that jumped up to 27.2 feet per second. That's almost twice what it was the 3 grain difference between 28.4 and 28.7. Now, look at 29 to 29.3, the load, and the velocity difference over the 0.3 of a grain, right, was 26.4 feet per second. So that was a very interesting indicator that jumped out at me right off the bat. When we now look at these numbers, you know, I try not to focus on SDs and ESs because they're all going to be pretty good with this rifle and that cartridge. I just know they are. These were 7-shot strings, by the way. So yes, I know some people are going to say, oh, you've got to shoot 20 or 30 strings. I'm not running that many through this rifle. I'm not going to waste, you know, 30 times 4. I'm not going to waste 120 rounds down this barrel to erode it just that much. That's as much as a match. So I thought 7 rounds, 4 strings, that's less than 30 rounds. That should be good. But if we look at the results here, again, back up to the table, you've got the SDs, the ESs, the group sizes, and what you really start to see is that this 29 and 29.3 have the best SDs and ESs, and they have some of the best group sizes. Look at the group size from 28.4, 28.7, and 29. You've got 0.73, 0.61, 0.68, all good. I'll take those all day long, right? But now you get to 29.3 and it almost halves the group size. So, and if you look at the SD and ES, 3.5 and 10.4, that's pretty darn good for me. So that all translates down then into the chart. And if you look at the chart, you can see our nodes. We do have nodes. We've got a node at 28.4 where I've been loading. The node at 28.7 kind of, I mean, it's a node, but there's a little too much jumpiness in there for me. And then when we get to 29 and 29.3, those look great. So I took all of this and just decided to really look at which group did I want to really go with. So let's look at the groups themselves. I've got it right here, and I'll put this up on the screen. If we look at the 28.4, that's the 7.26 or 0.73 group. That's not a bad group vertically. Vertically, that's a really good group, right? The 0.726 is horizontally. And we generally don't concern ourselves with that too much. 28.7, another really good group, 0.6 MOA. 29, this group was again 0.69 MOA. We had a few flyers there. The vertical on this group wasn't as good, I didn't think, as the others. And when I get to 29.3, wow, that to me is a really good group. Now that group says it's 0.44, but you got to realize it's 0.44 because of the horizontal spread. I'm going to wager if I took the vertical spread of this group, it's somewhere down around 0.3, maybe even 0.25-ish. So that's a really, really good group. Let's talk about now what this means and what the next steps are. Well, let's do a brief recap. So again, new barrel, new chamber job. I waited until it was broken in before I actually did this testing. And that's something I started to say earlier. But too many guys run 20, 50 rounds through their barrel, then they try to do this. And that's a big mistake because you're going to be chasing things all over the place because your barrel hasn't settled in yet. So make sure you break it in. It's not that you're going to be 3 feet off the target. That's not what this is all about. It's breaking it in so your velocities remain consistent with the cartridge you're running through it, right? So with that being said, after this, I really have decided on the 29.3 load. So what's next? Well, I know Sierra Match Kings, from what I've seen of them and from what I've used, I've probably shot 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 rounds of the 107s through this rifle, different barrels. They tend to like about 20 thousandths off the lands, but I'm still going to do a seating depth test here. So I'll run 29.3, then I'll start probably at 15 thousandths, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. So maybe that group. You can go, you could go 20 thousandths to 30 thousandths off and get a really good node. 40, 50, 60, maybe it's crummy. And then all of a sudden, 70, 80, 90, it falls right back in. So you can test for all of that. I'm not going to get carried away and try to go as far out as I can and see what works. I'm going to try to find something in that 20 to 40 thousandths range, and then we'll go with that. Once I find that, I'm done. I don't chase the lands. The only thing I'll do is exactly what just happened here after the barrel broke in with the load I was running. 500, 600, 700, 1,000 more rounds from now, if I'm out at the range zeroing with the cartridge that I have chosen, with the seating depth I've chosen, and that group starts to open up, let's say I get to 8/10 MOA or 1 MOA, that's when I'll start looking at the seating depth again and maybe loading out a little longer if I can, right? You can erode the lands so much if you keep shooting the same barrel that you may not be able to load out with the cartridge overall length as long as you can. Your case, your cartridge may not fit in your magazine. You may not have enough neck tension to hold that bullet in there. You got to be very careful with that stuff. A lot of stuff I'm throwing at you, but I wanted this to be kind of a shortish video and just tell you that this is the step 1 that I'm going through. And then I'm going to do a follow-up video to this probably in a couple weeks after I do that seating depth test. And let's see. I mean, that's a pretty darn good group, 100-yard group right there. So there you have it. I've got a lot of stuff coming up, some videos on some equipment that's been sent to me, some equipment that I bought, and then some miscellaneous videos. Well, thanks for hanging in there, guys. I really do appreciate it. All the likes, comments, subscriptions, and until next time, shoot straight.